I just love that extra little warning there. Hello, good morning, good afternoon, and for some of you, it's evening. Good evening. I'm Yvonne Myles. It is time for the vibe. I am the founder of Vibrantly Living You, which is a health and wellness coaching. Well, actually, I call it a movement, a health and wellness movement that is dedicated to helping you find health that is so vibrant, it's as though you're aging backwards. And that's important. Everybody has that ability within them. And typically, all it takes are a few small changes in your life. And that's what I'm here for. I'm here to provide you inspiration, motivation, and the know how to be able to put yourself on a path that works for you, that is the right path for you to be able to enjoy really radiant health in all realms of your life. I'm just so pleased that I'm able to bring on interesting leaders in various fields. I have one of those people with me here today that I will be introducing in just a moment. Before we get rolling, no, I just want to remind you that we are actually at the last week of the last month that we will be exploring the heart chakra. Yes, we took it on ourselves earlier this year to look at health through a slightly different lens. Actually, seven lenses, and that's the lens of the chakra system. If you've been following us closely, then you know, and maybe you already have an appreciation for the heart or for the chakra system. It's that energy body that we all have, and it corresponds with major organs and endocrine glands in our body. So there really is a strong physical component to this ethereal thing called energy that we may or may not see, but we do experience in our bodies. So we started with the root chakra, spent a month exploring how can we rethink what it means to be vibrantly healthy through the root chakra. And then we worked up through the sacral chakra, the solar plexus chakra, and then voila, here we are for the heart chakra. And this is such an important area of our lives. It encompasses everything really from the shoulders to the very upper part of the digestive system. It's such a large area. It provides us so much energy, and it results, the outcomes of it are so very vital to our health and to our happiness that I decided we had to spend 2 months looking at it. So that's what we're doing. But unfortunately, today is the last day for that. Ooh, and I'm just so excited that we're going to focus in for today on the most obvious element of the heart chakra, and that is love and connection. So a quick refresher, the heart chakra is, yep, you got it, it's the heart, but it's also the lungs. So think of breathing. The element is air. It also involves the thymus gland, which sits right there behind the sternum. We are three-dimensional beings, so it extends all the way around your spine. You can even think of there being like a little halo around your upper chest. You can take it all the way up into the shoulders, the upper back, and then, like I said, the upper part of the digestive system. So symbolically, what does this mean for us, the heart chakra? I am a firm believer that if you have love, kindness, compassion in your life for yourself as well as for others, not only does it ripple out to others, but it ripples inward for yourself. And you're more likely to take care of yourself. You're more likely to make those choices that bring about more vibrant living, a healthier outlook, more motivation, more happiness, but it starts from within. So we're going to be talking today not just about what it means as an individual, but what does that mean when you have somebody in your life, or maybe you're looking to bring somebody into your life to share in that, to amplify what that love and kindness can mean, not just for that symbolic heart, but for the entire body. And so that is why I am absolutely thrilled to have this stunning entrepreneur and coach with me here today. And she is incredibly charismatic. She is an expert in the science and the art of love. Let me tell you about her. I'm going to bring her on because I know you'd much rather hear about her. Yes, there we go. There she is. Let me tell you a little bit about Cathy. Yes, Cathy Garner. Cathy is a relationship coach, a TEDx speaker, and she has created a unique coaching process specifically for her clients. But first and foremost, Cathy is a partner to a gorgeous man, I would love to meet him, who she describes as her greatest teacher in love. And she's also the mother of two wonderful children. So right there you can see there's just love just streaming through her life. Her mission is to equip a generation to love well and to live with purpose. And she speaks with the aim of bringing hope back to anybody who may have lost faith in love or found that they no longer have a passion for life. Oh, this is so very heart chakra centered. She coaches individuals and couples in the art of open conversation and relationship skills. And she loves to talk about how we can use the science of love to have authentic personal and professional relationships that make a positive difference in the world. Cathy, welcome to the Vibe.
Oh, thank you so much, Yvonne. Thank you for your lovely introduction and just for inviting me to be here. What a privilege to be the last person talking about love and the heart chakra. And I love your description of that. I also love your description about your movement. It's been a while since we've seen each other. I just love what you're doing. And this idea that we are aging backwards. I think you're just such a beautiful example of that. You're
Oh my,
amazing.
oh my heart receives all that you have said. Thank you so very much. Oh my gosh. So I'm just really curious about this unique coaching process. A lot of us out there, call ourselves coaches, but you've got a unique process. Tell us about that. What is that all about?
Okay, well, it's a little bit different. So I call myself the relationship artist. Actually, somebody else called me the relationship artist because I do a little bit of portrait art and I'm a coach. And this alchemy happened one day where I woke up with this idea of how the two things fuse so brilliantly together. And you know that expression, a picture can say 1,000 words, something like that. But my unique process that I use with individuals and with couples is literally a portrait drawn in 1,000 words. Now that kind of difficult to explain, but if I can show you one. Actually, I've got mine right here. This is a little bit old, but my husband actually calls this the Disney princess version of me. But if you look really closely, you can see that this is made up of lines of words.
Oh my gosh, yes. I
So this,
see that.
yeah,
It's gorgeous.
thank you so much. Thank you.
And a very good likeness as well.
As I was. But what's really interesting, I call these vision portraits because what I've done really is help people to fuse together the idea of their vision and their identity. You know how we create vision boards and we often use words and we use images. Now, vision boards have worked phenomenally well for me, surprisingly well, without really any conscious effort at all. And one day I woke up after being on, it was a master coach event. I woke up and I realized that we spend so much energy thinking about our vision for our lives and we put it out there on this board. And then I had this other process where I was drawing my portrait actually in a diary. So I was creating these diaries. I used them a lot when I was traveling through India, and I would just draw my face, but in words. So I'd draw my diary instead of lines on a page, draw my face. Why not? And I suddenly thought, well, hang on a minute, what would happen if we drew our vision boards into our face? How would that change things? And immediately somebody in the group I was with said, oh, I'm your first client. I want to have my vision created. I want my vision portrait. So I created her vision, and she thought she was having a vision for her professional life, for growing her business. And what happened as we talked was that this same kind of kernel of a vision was part of the vision she had for her whole life. So this thing kind of expanded, and we drew not only her portrait, but her vision of nature and her family and all the things she wanted in her future. And it was really exciting and powerful process. And I've used this process again and again with different clients. Not everybody I work with. I mostly do relationship coaching. But sometimes if people ask me, or if I suggest a vision portrait, people will go with it. And I was working with one woman who was she hadn't dated in 6 years, and she had come to me for relationship advice to find herself in a partnership. And we worked on her relationship skills, and we had the most amazing time. All of her relationships transformed. Her relationship with her mum, with her colleagues at work, with all the people in her life. But she was still struggling with this idea of going out there and meeting men. And so I got her to create a vision board. She talked me through it. And I drew her words, just her words, as I'd recorded them into the lines and the shadows of her face. And 3 days after I gave her her vision portrait, she went out and she started dating. And she carried on dating until she met a man she'd fallen in love with, and he fell in love with her. And
Ah,
so there was something at that moment when I realized it was just 3 days. What was it about seeing her vision that shifted things? And what I think it is that when we see our vision combined with our identity, something amazing happens. That kind of the unconscious part of our brain goes to work to make that vision a reality. Gosh, look at me. I am this woman in a relationship. Wow, how can I make that happen? Better start dating. I told this story to another couple whose portrait I'd done of them as a couple, and they said, well, it was exactly the same for us. 3 months after we'd put the vision portrait on the wall of my husband's study, he was promoted, and he got 3 promotions that year. And she said, and my friend, an old friend of mine, came to see me, and she said, wow, you're suddenly so confident. What's happened to you? And she took her friend to see the vision portrait and said, look, this is it. You know, I know who I am. I'm really comfortable in my skin. So this has worked over and over and over. And in fact, the picture that I just showed you of me, I drew that when I was far from smiley and happy. I was in a real funk, you know, when you get really stuck. And I was already teaching the relationship skills. I've kind of been scouring the earth to find out, how do you make relationships work? So I had this great set of relationship skills that I got from mainly from the research over in the US and in Canada, about, you know, how you make relationships work, real evidence-based stuff. And I was teaching this stuff to couples just about to get married. And so I had the workbook, and there I was, stuck in my own relationship, and I didn't know how to move forward. So I went to my studio and I started to draw my own vision portrait. You know, who am I? What kind of a wife am I? What kind of a lover am I? What kind of a mother am I? And as I drew the love that I wanted to feel and the gratitude I wanted to have into my face, something inside me just broke. And that hardness and that resistance that I've been feeling just softened. And I was able to just get through that stuckness. I don't even know the cause of it now. I can't remember that bit, but I remember that feeling of, oh, it's okay. I can be vulnerable. I can be myself. And I know that my partner's really, really there for me.
Oh, that
So
sounds so brilliant. I'm
it's
just,
quite a fun process. I'm normally either crying, I'm sobbing my way through these portraits, or I'm smiling and laughing because I'm listening to people's voices and they're sharing the stories of their lives, the stories of their future lives. And it's so inspiring to hear people talk about the life they want to live, the person they want to be. And you can see that in them already. It's really interesting. Sometimes people don't see it in themselves.
yeah, yeah,
But
yeah.
as you're working with people, you can see who they really are. And it's beautiful to be able to draw that into their face.
Yeah, so wherever you are, if you're watching this on the replay, it'd be great if you're out there right now. But put a line in the comments thread if any of this is sounds fascinating to you. If you want to know more about this, and if something about this is pulling you as well, because I'm finding this is you are absolutely right. This is a unique process. And I wonder if it has something to do with people are seeing themselves, they're redefining or maybe having revealed to them the relationship with themselves,
Oh, yeah.
their own relationship, and they're falling in love with that version of themselves. I wonder if there's something to do, with that.
Yeah, well, I think that's foundational. Actually, what you've just said about falling in love with you is foundational. If you want to have a great relationship with anyone, then falling in love with you first is fundamental. When we know who we are, when we love who we are, then we're on such a solid footing, aren't we? To give, to be generous, to be loving, to not take offense when we think something's a little bit of a barbed comment or when we don't understand something. When we're in love with us, when we know we're okay, we can just stay curious and stay open. And it makes such a difference. I ran a course beginning of first lockdown last year, and it was for people who were looking for love. So it was called The Art and Science of Finding Love. And everybody who went through that program rated themselves 9 out of 10 for being in love with themselves by the end of the program. Every single person. And some of them had come from 2. So it was 2, 3, 5, 6 out of 10, and all of them had shifted. All of them were at that place where they were like, yeah, okay, there's maybe a little bit of room for improvement, but I am in love with me. And when you're in that position, magic happens. So the number of people actually started having relationships with people they really liked. One woman who had been seeing, a few other people, just fell in love with herself and said, well, do you know, I don't need a relationship anymore.
Good
I'm
for
in
her.
love with me. There's no there's no need to be in a relationship with anyone else. I was looking for something that I already have.
Yeah.
So whatever the relationship is, whether it's with someone else or with yourself, this stuff makes a huge difference.
Yeah, and is she was in a really good place for that, considering the lockdown. I probably should have mentioned to our listeners here that Cathy is joining us all the way from the UK, where it is 6 hours. I think you're 6 hours ahead of us, and so thank you once again for taking that time to be with us here. This
Oh, it's a real pleasure. It's a real pleasure. I think we're relational. A lot of people say, well, you don't really get that energy through a Zoom screen, but absolutely you do. I've been feeling that this whole 18 months have been such a blessing to have this screen and to have these incredible new relationships that we've developed because we are all one. And this is where I get geeky and I love the science because I was reading some studies that came out last year that were talking about how consciousness itself is created across brains. My consciousness and your consciousness are not separate. Now, of course, those of us who are spiritual will have been able to say, well, of course, we always knew that. But now the science is catching up. And I think the more refined and the more nuanced the tool, the more we'll discover how relational we are with each other and with the living world around us. So yeah, it's all about relationship, isn't it? When you boil everything down, it's all about relationship. And knowing how to do relationships well then makes a big difference. And that's, again, I think where the science comes in, because I learned so much from studying the science of love. People like John Gottman and Julia Schwartz Gottman and Sue Johnson and Esther Perel and Gary Chapman and a whole host of people, and some lesser known people, Bob Levinson. There's some fantastic research that's been done that really just clearly shows us, you do this, you're going to have a good relationship. You do
Well, then
this, you're really not going to have a good relationship. This mystery that we think love is doesn't have to be a mystery. And that gives me hope. And I hope it gives other people hope too.
so let's get into it then. What is the science of love? I mean, love is supposed to just be this loosey goosey thing, fairy tales and everything. You have it, you don't have it. But you keep talking like there's a hard science. So, all right, tell us about it.
There is a hard science. It's sometimes I just say your relationship, your kind of long-term relationships or relationship can be either a life-limiting condition or a life-enhancing condition. The people who are around you can influence your life for good or ill dramatically. And the science behind that is now really, really clear. If you're in a really bad relationship where there are negative interactions, particularly contempt, if somebody's looking down on you, feeling superior to you, then you're going to be prone to a lot more contagious diseases. Contempt suppresses the immune system. It makes the miserably married 35% more likely to get ill. And that's really devastating, isn't it? It can shorten your life to be in a poor relationship. It can lengthen your life by between 4 and 15 years. The research is really clear, a minimum of kind of average 4 years to 15 years. Some researchers say that you can live longer if you're in a really good relationship. So it's powerful stuff. Every cell in your body is affected by the thoughts that you have, and the thoughts that you have are connected with the thoughts that your partner has. And so the chemicals that are being created, every thought creates a chemical. That chemical kind of cocktail in your body makes a difference to your longevity, to your health, to everything. And when it comes to kind of the science of just doing love well, I've boiled it down to 12. I think there are 12 really clear relationship skills. And you may notice that I hover over the word ship when I talk about relationship. And that's because I use the metaphor of a ship, of a tall ship. So you imagine this very romantic galleon with big sails and a crow's nest. And you go up into the crow's nest and you look out and you catch a glimpse of your happily ever island. What is your relationship for? What are you looking for? Where are you going? What are your dreams? What are your aspirations in life? And then you use the ship's wheel to guide your relationship towards that happily ever island and away from the iceberg, which are the 4 relationship killers. Now, of course, you're not going to go anywhere if your hull is not sound, if the relationship, the friendship skills are not really, really solid. So it's a sound hull of friendship. In fact, the other day, my husband said, shouldn't it be the sound hull of togetherness? And I love that. I love that he changed that kind of idea of friendship, because we all think we know what friendship means, but there's that energy of togetherness in the 5 friendship skills. And so that's talking about our responsiveness to each other. It's talking about our empathy. That's right at the heart of a close together kind of relationship, isn't it? And then, are we filling each other's treasure chest? Are we actually loving each other in a way that we understand? Because we all give and receive love in very different ways. And then, are we spending time together? Are we appreciating each other? Are we expressing that? All of that is the stuff that keeps our relationships afloat through all the storms of life. And of course, when you've got a storm, what do you do with the sails? Emotion is the wind in the sails of our relationships. And so those sails are the skills to manage emotion. There are some emotions, and you may understand this, anyone in a relationship is going to get this. There are some emotions in a relationship that you really shouldn't harness. You really shouldn't be catching that wind. You should just let some of those emotions just blow on by. They are not going to help you get to your happily ever island. They're not going to help you have a loving relationship. And there are times when you reef the sails, when you pull in the sails, and you just don't catch those emotions.
Yeah.
You don't need to express every emotion.
You don't engage, I guess, in a
You
way.
don't engage that emotion, exactly. And then there are other times when you do, you catch those fair winds. And there are, there's up in the sales, we're talking really about healing. We're talking about solving problems that can be solved emotionally. We're talking about being open to what's really beneath those problems that you will never solve. In fact, the majority of conflicts in most relationships are never resolved.
Oh, yeah.
And it's a
Really?
shocking statistic. 69% of relationship conflict is unresolvable.
So, I mean,
Does that make it a terrible thing?
how do
Sorry.
couples get through? How do couples, survive that then? How
Well,
do they continue in a relationship if 69% of their conflict is unresolved?
they don't need to resolve it. And I think this is where mainstream therapy and counseling has gone wrong. What a counselor, a traditional counselor or therapist, will often say to you is, let's solve these problems. Let's resolve the relationship problems and conflicts that you've got. If 69% of them, even in the best relationships, are not solvable, what's the point in focusing there? Actually, what you can do, and what great couples do, is they look at these unresolvable things, these conflicts, as they're kind of clashing their heads together or their fists together over and over again over the same things. They get curious and they go, oh, what's really going on here? And they look beneath, they look inside those fists, and they find that they weren't really clenching them to fight each other. They were clenching them to protect something really, really precious that was inside those fists. And that precious thing shouldn't ever be given away. We don't have to adjust and adapt and change ourselves. There are things about us, our values, our principles. They are the very bones of us. This is what Professor John Gottman says. They're the very bones of us, and you shouldn't let them go. But what you can do about them is get curious about each other's and dialogue about them, talk about them in an open way. And there's a tool that I use with couples that is really brilliant. It's a really simple one, in fact, where you just go, you have this moment of conflict, and you just pin down, okay, what's important to you about that, about the perspective you're taking on that. And you keep asking that question, what's important to you about that? And what's important to you about that? And every layer down, you find out something new about your partner, until you find that actually underneath all of that, there will be a very strong value or a principle. And you can usually agree on that. So it's powerful stuff. And when you recognize that maybe it's about love, maybe it's about equality, maybe it's about freedom, maybe it's about respect. It could be about any one of those really powerful principles. And when you see that, there's no need to fight anymore. The conflict is still there. You're never going to agree, but you can see why your partner's doing things that way. And you can see why you're doing it that way. And the sting goes out of it, and you can live with it, and you can embrace each other's differences.
Yeah, I'm just going to break in here and say once again, if you're watching this replay or you're watching this live, if some of this is really hitting you, making you smile, making you feel hope, then give us a thumbs up or give us a little heart emoji or something. Cathy, I just have to say, I really appreciate the metaphors that you use, talking about the ship, talking about the Love Island, and then this last one about these fists holding on to something precious.
Yeah,
That
that's not my metaphor, that one. That is John Gottman's. So that comes
well,
from the master himself.
all right.
If you want to read about this stuff, then anything by John and Julia Schwartz Gottman, it's worth a read. It's really clear what has been discovered from hundredth of a second interactions between couples that they've been doing over the last 40 years. Just amazing research.
Hey,
And I think
you want to spell that last name for us to make sure?
Gottman. Well, Gottman is Gottman. If you look up Gottman, you'll find masses of stuff on the science of love.
Yeah.
And I think it's important to give clear and powerful metaphors. And that's why I developed the ship model, because it really holds true. If you're looking to solve something in the sales, in the emotions, you don't necessarily look in your emotional world. You might have to look at the sound hull of friendship. You may discover that actually you're not being very together in your relationship. You're not spending enough time together. It can sometimes just be one thing. I
Mhm.
was working with a couple who had actually separated. They were living apart. They'd already told the school that they were breaking up and the boys were going to be in separate homes. And they came to me because their mediator couldn't understand why they were splitting up. And we talked through everything. And I could see that they just had the most beautiful friendship and they managed emotions really well. And I was racking my brain until we started looking at their vision. And they'd just lost sight of the vision they had for their relationship. And so we started to talk about that and unpack that. And once they got that clear again, they wanted to travel, they wanted to see the world, they wanted to do fun stuff and have adventures again. Within a month, she'd moved back in. Within 2 months, they'd done a little marriage ceremony on their own. They'd put the wedding rings back on. You know, it was just extraordinary how just a small metaphor and 40 years of other people's brilliant research can bring people back together. And that's what I see again and again. It's just wonderful stuff.
Yeah, and I was just going to ask you, what have you noticed in your clients' lives once they begin to understand about the art and science of love? And you just gave us quite a wonderful example. Uh,
Yeah, well, I think it's also because people can hold on to that metaphor. You know, the movies, Hollywood and Bollywood have been telling us forever that love is like this and it's all happily ever after. And if you're lucky, it'll just land on you and love is fated. What I will always say is love is not fated. Love is created. Love, we create it and we create it moment by moment in every choice. And so what we need is something visual and powerfully visual to remember that, you know, so that we've got something to replace those movies. It was funny, actually, even this morning, my kids said to me, they said, Mum, love, or I can't remember exactly what their words were, but love or romance or whatever it was in the films is not the same as real life, is it? I was like, no, it's really not.
You know what? You know what that means? When I was introducing you, you said your words were that you want to teach a generation about how to love and love well. And it sounds like you've already imparted that in the next generation of your children. Good
Yeah, well,
on you. That must have made you feel so good to hear them say that.
it really did. And in fact, my children can be my best coach. There are a few little phrases that I like to use, like when things are not going well, I will say, and I love that. It's just a little reminder to myself that when I'm stressed, there's something good happening. You know, we can turn conflicts around. We were talking today about you know, you can make a heaven of hell with your thoughts. Shakespeare said there's nothing good or bad, but thinking makes it so. And you can make a heaven of hell. You can also make a hell of heaven. And I've worked with people who, even when great things are happening, they'll still find a way to say, but, oh, yes, but it won't last. Or, oh, this will go wrong and this will go wrong. Yeah.
I was just going to say I'm guilty of that. Another opportunity if you're listening. Thumbs up if you know that that's you. Sometime I
Well,
don't
it's
do it
all
all
of
the
us
time.
though,
I don't
isn't
do it
it?
all the time. Yeah.
Yeah, it's all of us. My daughter, I was getting stressed about something a little while ago. In fact, she was only 3 at the time. And I was getting stressed about something. And she looked up at me and she said, "And you love that, Mummy?" And I'm like, "Well, yes, I do. Thank you." And this is what I mean by them being great coaches. Because without that relationship, we can be so happy with ourselves. We can be so pleased, can't we, about how well we're doing. It's not until you get poked and prodded and the relationship challenges come up that you realize, wow, I've still got so much work to do.
Yeah,
And
it's
some
never
of that
done.
work, when you talk about the next generation, some of that work is actually undoing the work that Hollywood and Bollywood have been doing, and the fairy stories, of course, from right back in the very earliest moments of their life, the moments of their literary lives, where they've been reading these wonderful tales of romance. But actually, love may begin by falling in love. But when it doesn't work, what do? You know, that sense that love just floats off. Well, if we've learned relationship skills, we know exactly what to do. Oh, what's going wrong here? Oh, maybe I don't really understand why that's so important. You know, using that analogy again, or
Yeah.
oh, we haven't been expressing how much affection or appreciation we have for each other recently.
Mhm.
Or, gosh, when was the last time we talked about the purpose of our relationship? You start to see where things might not be working. Just little changes, little kind of just paying more attention, focusing more on these positive skills can turn everything around.
Yeah, you
Also getting curious about the negative emotions. I'm not one to be kind of bouncing around and saying only have positive emotions. When there are negative emotions, love can handle that. Love can
Yeah,
get
it's big enough.
curious about it.
Yeah, it's big enough, isn't it? It's a big enough ship. It's a big enough container. It's
Exactly.
limitless in that sense. I just wanted to key in on that word curiosity, or curious, that you brought up, because that almost sounds like, in addition to being a relationship artist, you're also like a relationship detective, or maybe you're teaching. It sounds as though you're teaching your clients how to become a relationship detective by being curious about those areas. What do you think about that?
That's really interesting. I've never used that analogy. I've never had anyone describe it in that way, but yeah, absolutely. Maybe I've heard people talk about that online, being a detective and looking at stuff. Yeah, it's not something I'd ever thought about before, but it is. Yeah, as an artist, you get curious about everything. You get curious about every shade. You get curious about every shape. You get curious about the lines and the details. So for me, it's about learning to look.
Oh,
So whatever analogy works for you, whether it's sailing a ship, whether it's being a detective, whether it's being an artist, that curiosity and humility makes all the difference.
yeah, all of
One of
this.
the things I teach is about how you can really go into each other's worlds, but the only way you do that is by having humility and curiosity.
Hmm.
And I talk about this tunnel. It's almost like you and we're separated by, you know, thousands of miles and these screens, but
Yeah.
we really are separated. We really, even if you're living or standing right next to each other, we are in different worlds because we've had completely different life experiences. We've got different, groups of origin. We've got different kind of personalities. We've got all these things in our lives that are so different. And what often happens is that we will connect with people because of the similarities. But what happens when you don't have similarities? Or what happens when you're talking to somebody, you're talking to your beloved, and you're finding that there's no area of overlap? And that's where you can get curious and you can say, okay, can I come into your world? Can I go almost, I think about a tunnel. Can I crawl through the tunnel and that separates your world and mine and go into your world and just stand there and see how it is for you in your world? Do you want to come over into my world and see how it is for me in my world? And
Mhm.
when you can have that level of understanding, and when people are willing to empathize with each other and have those open conversations, you can really turn things around and feel loved and feel understood. Because so often that's what we're looking for, isn't it? We're looking to be known and we're looking to be loved in that deep, empathetic way.
Yeah, and to be acknowledged. But from what you've just described, I can feel that. I can really feel that in here. But I'm also wondering, isn't there a kernel, or a place for courage in that as
Mm.
well? I mean, to have the
Oh,
courage to go into somebody else's world in that way.
yeah. And you need an invitation too. So there's definitely courage. Um, to really see through somebody's eyes, you've got to have permission, and that relies on a lot of trust to that people will be willing to open up their world to you. What happens in relationships that are challenging is that the icebergs make it very, very difficult to really ever even want to open your world to the other person. So if you're in a relationship where there's criticism, where there's a lot of finger pointing, saying, you're the problem. It's fine to say we've got a problem. How can we solve it together? But when you've reached that conclusion that you're the problem, then the other person's, they're not having that affirmation, what you were just saying then. And what tends to happen then is the defenses go up. So it's like, well, hang on a minute. I'm not the problem. You're just as bad. Or, nothing I do is ever good enough for you. And you get that defensive behavior, which is, again, it's an iceberg. Once those walls are up, then how do you ever get through to each other? And
Mhm.
so you start to look down on each other. You start to feel contempt for each other, not because you're a horrible person, but because if your needs are not being met, and if you can't get through to your partner, you start to to sense that you're just never going to get through, that you've married somebody, or that you're stuck in this situation where your needs are never going to be met. And then you get to a place where you're emotionally disengaging from one another because it becomes too painful to let each other into your worlds. And things get icy, and the holes in that friendship, the sound hole of friendship gets punctured, just like the Titanic, by those icebergs. And then, you can't sail a ship with holes in the hull.
Yeah, and you just mentioned that word again, contempt, which is, at the very beginning, we talked about how contempt leads to illness.
Yeah.
It's that beginning of that downward spiral, and illness, of course, would be the exact opposite of vibrancy. And we want people. We both are very passionate about people living in their very best life. At that highest vibration. And so we want people to be able to experience the positive side of things. This is absolutely fascinating.
It is, isn't it?
Absolutely fascinating. Yes, yes.
I know. I feel so grateful just to have discovered the science of love. Without this stuff, I couldn't be in the relationship I'm in.
Oh,
How do people do it? There is a proportion of people who actually just get this stuff naturally. They absorb it. They either see it maybe in their family, or they see the opposite and they know, well, I'm never going to do that. So I'm going to, I've got people in my life who I look at whose parents were a disaster at relationships, and they're somehow almost magically living these amazingly close together lives. And I really marvel at the people who get this stuff naturally. I am not naturally good at relationships. And this is really how I stumbled into this work. I was having a disastrous time on the relationship front, but I discovered the science of love really actually through somebody pointing this out to me. I remember I was at a party every year. There's a swimming barbecue of a friend of mine, and I've been going to this for years. And every year I turned up, and after a while, I was turning up as the only single girl at the party, and it kept going year after year. And I'd tell the stories of the latest kind of relationship disaster.
yeah.
And my friend said to me, "Well, Kath," he said, "there's only one common denominator in all your relationship failures." And I was like, "Ooh,
Oh, I
ouch."
get that hurt. Oh, ouch. Ouch.
There aren't many people who can say that to you, are there? But there's such love. This is, again, that's an example of a great relationship. The friendship that we had meant that he could say something like that to me, and instead of hating him for it, I actually went, "Oh my goodness, maybe you're right." He could see something in me that I hadn't seen. I'd been happily pointing the finger at
Yeah.
my previous partners. I'd been perfecting 2 out of the 4 relationship killers, the 2 out of the 4 icebergs. I had been really good at criticism, really good at contempt.
Yeah.
And I didn't even see that this is what was destroying my relationships.
Mm.
So I then had to go back, rewrite history, look back over the relationships I'd had and how hurt I must have left people in the past.
Yeah.
And then relearn, for that, I'm really grateful to
Yeah.
the
So,
Gottmans and to Sue Johnson and to
yeah.
people like Gary Chapman, who wrote the 5 Love Languages, and people who've really studied, what is it that makes the difference?
Yeah.
And you put all this stuff together, and I've kind of created this synthesis of all this stuff.
Uh-huh.
One-
There's so many questions I want to ask, but I think the most important question I should ask on behalf of anybody in the vibrantly living universe right now is, how can people get more of what you are doing? How can they connect with you?
Well, you're welcome to ping me just a message on Messenger if you wish. That's the easiest way to catch me. I'm also the relationship artist on Facebook, or I have a Facebook group, and that's a really good place to be. So if you want to join the Facebook group, it's called Relationship Skills. So if you go Facebook group, Facebook.com/groups/ you'll find Relationship Skills is the name of the group.
Okay.
And in there, I drop things from time to time that are just really useful resources. And one of them is the Relationship Survival Guide. And in there at the moment, there's a link. You can go, you can watch my TED talk, my little TEDx talk, and that's packed with useful stuff. But there's also a link to get a copy of the relationship survival skills, which are the 4 icebergs, and what do you do about them? You know, what causes them? What are the antidotes? How can you melt them? How can you avoid them in the future? So that's really the starting place. If you want your relationship to survive, there's just 4 things you have to avoid. That's it. And you turn that around and you've got a fighting chance of actually repairing any holes that are in your hull, any rips that are in your sails, and turning those challenging relationships around. And if you're a good relationship, then you know what to avoid in future and how to share that with your children. And that's the thing that that's kind of my big vision, is that if I can get relationship skills into schools, into colleges,
Oh,
teach young people that really there's just 3 things they need to learn to have a reason for your relationship, to be able to manage your emotions, and to have a great friendship where you're really together,
you
whilst avoiding the 4 icebergs, then you can have a healthy relationship.
and you can change
Also,
the world. You
wow,
can
why
change
don't
the
we? Why
world.
don't we?
Yes, yes, yes. You, me. Oh, this is, oh my gosh, this is just mind blowing. That's all I can say. I want to also just thank you for being so generous that you would put something so foundational and potentially world changing, peacemaking, love making, at people's disposal. And all they have to do is go to your Facebook group. Say the name of it again.
Relationship skills.
Relationship skills.
Yeah,
And I will make sure that I'll put that out under the comments on this video as well.
thank you, Yvonne. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's my joy. I mean, I want everyone to know this stuff, and I want everyone to not just know it, but be able to remember it when they need it.
Oh,
Because it's when we're stressed, isn't it? It's when we're in those moments of that we don't have the resources at our fingertips. So we have to practice in peacetime. We have to, before it becomes a crisis, you know, get studying, get figuring this stuff out, understand not just the nuts and bolts and the hard science, but what is really interesting, and this goes back to the heart chakra. What I loved about science when I first found it was that I thought it could keep me safe. I'd given up on my heart. I wasn't trusting my heart. I wanted to go up into my head. I wanted to analyze everything. I wanted to have this down. I liked the idea of relationship skills. I still like the idea of these 12 relationship skills. But what the science has shown me is that happy couples don't live in their head. They don't analyze. They don't interpret what's going on. They drop down to their hearts and they talk about their feelings. They are open and they're willing to be vulnerable. And as you said, to have courage. Courage is of the heart. Cour, the French word for heart. Courage is from the heart. And so that's what I've learned from the science of love, is not to trust my frail interpretations of a situation, because who knows? Get curious, have the courage to live from the heart, to live wholeheartedly, and to love with our whole hearts. And that's the message that I want to be able to share with people.
yes. Oh, and what a beautiful message it is. I just want to put a stake in the ground, and then as we come to the end of this incredible edition of the Vibe, is that while we've been talking about love for another person, that I do believe everything you said also applies to whether you are in an externally loving relationship as well. And so that's another reason I so appreciate your relationship skills, your friendship skills, right? Because those can be applied to you, those can be applied to the friends in your life to maintain those relationships, because love comes in very many ways to us, doesn't it?
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah. Well, my background was leadership, actually. And so I now say lead with love. In fact, back in 2001, I remember telling my boss at the university, leadership's really about love, isn't it? And he bent close. We were in the university cafe, the staff cafeteria, and he bent close to me and he said, "Don't tell the academics." because he was nervous that if I let this idea out that leadership was about love, there would be mayhem. People would reject this. But actually, what I found was, in fact, with the academics at the university in particular, they were people who really did love. They had this kind of altruistic approach to leading departments because they weren't getting much out of it. They were doing it to support their colleagues. So this stuff doesn't just work in romantic relationships, it works in your relationships with your family, it works in your relationships with your friends, and it works in relationships with your colleagues. And as a leader, I've adapted the relationship model as a leadership model as well.
Uh-huh.
So if you are a leader, you can take these skills and, okay, maybe we don't talk about love in the workplace, but maybe we talk about collegiality, or
Yeah.
maybe we talk about inspiring instead of perhaps emotional or erotic intelligence. But the same stuff works. You have to manage your emotions. You have to have that sound basis for your collegiate relationships, and you have to know where you're going.
Yeah. Oh my
Have that vision.
This is just going to go down as one of my favorite interviews on the Vibe. And let me tell you, I have had some incredible people here today. And this is, wow, you are just setting a new standard here, Cathy. Thank you so much.
Oh, bless you. Thank you, Yvonne. It's a real pleasure. It really is. It's such a
Yes,
pleasure.
yes. Well, we have, I started a little tradition, I guess. I have no idea how long I'm gonna be able to keep it going, but it's so far so good. And that is I end the Vibe with a recommendation of a chakra food and a chakra move of the week. And the reason I do that is that while my philosophy about vibrant living is broad. It does include relationships. It does include your mindset. It does include your relationship with the outdoors. All of those things that I will often weave into the programs that I offer. I do say consistently that the biggest tools in your toolkit for vibrantly living a vibrantly living lifestyle is your food, your nutrition, and movement. Those I think are the biggest tools that you have. And so it made sense to wrap things up since we were talking with about chakras by offering a chakra food and a chakra move of the week. So over the month of July and August, I introduced a number of chakra foods, and I thought, well, it's only fitting here at the end of the month that we put it all together. And instead of saying, hey, go out and eat this food, see if you can work this food into your diet, let's put it all together. And so that is what I did. I'm going to see if I can share and see if it is still out there. Yesterday, I experimented with let me see. We said broccoli, these are good for your heart. Red bell pepper, red cabbage, all of these good for anti-inflammation and good for blood pressure and good for your blood vessels, and garlic and ginger, two other really good inflammation reducing foods. And then we came up with farro as a grain that you could also use to create the fiber and bring in some more moisture into your body, more fluids. So I thought, let's put it all together, and I created this, what I'm just calling it, the heart chakra stir fry.
Looks amazing. So delicious.
Yes, and because we started out our chakra month with a little bit of sensuality, then the chakra food at the very beginning was dark chocolate. So there's no dark chocolate in there, but my recommendation is go get some dark chocolate for dessert. And
I
then
was
I
kind of
made,
hoping you might say chocolate.
yeah,
It's definitely my food for love.
yeah. So I actually created a video, and we're not going to show it here, but I posted the video in my private group, Vibrantly Yours. So once again, If you are not a member of the private group Vibrantly Yours, then just go look for it on Facebook. Answer a few questions so that I know how best to serve you. And there's lots of great content out there. I've got some recipes, got lots of inspiration. I've got some remnants of some trainings that I've done, and now I've got this video out there, so you can see that as well. And that is also where I'm going to be posting the information about our beautiful guest, Cathy Garner's relationship Facebook page as well. So lots of good things happening here on the Vibe, lots of good things happening in Vibrantly Yours. And why do I call my private group Vibrantly Yours? Because I believe a vibrant life is yours for the taking. Just like Cathy is here to tell us, or maybe I should do this. I think it goes opposite whenever you're on a recording. That Cathy is here because vibrant loving is yours for the taking when you follow her relationship skills. And I do hope you will be able to do that. So I'm going to leave you this week with that invitation to go to Vibrantly Yours, but also to connect with me by signing up for a complimentary Vibrant for Life breakthrough session. Complimentary, 30 minutes. You can find a link on my website. My website is www.v, that's for vibrant, living you, that's the letter u.com, vlivingyou.com. Sign up for a Vibrant for Life breakthrough session. It's an opportunity for us to get to know each other. I can understand more about what your vision for your health is. And then if there are any obstacles in the way, any icebergs in the way of your relationship to vibrant health, then I'll do everything I can to get you one step closer to getting closer to your vision. So that is always there for you.
That sounds like a wonderful resource. Wow.
We have come to the end of this week's Vibe. I actually get to head over to finish up on a 4-day challenge that I've been doing with my colleague Anne Greenwald called Leap into Vitality: 5 secrets to beat the aging slump and emerge into your best life. And we'll be talking about mindset today, which is a lot of, a lot of what Cathy has brought up has to do with mindset today. So I'm going to be running over there. We'll be starting that up in about another hour or so, and just be looking for new programs and opportunities and challenges that come your way. Cathy, is there anything that you would like to share before we wave everybody goodbye?
Just to remember that love is not fated. You create it. And every moment of every day is about choosing that, choosing to create something that is beautiful in your life so that your life is full of love. And we can all do it, just starting from this moment.
That is so hopeful. There is nothing I can add to that. It is beautiful. Love is created. I love it. Thank you once again. And everybody, have a wonderful day, a wonderful weekend. I'm going to take next week off, so you can find me back here in a couple of weeks. Until then, remember that a vibrant life is yours for the taking. So go out and get it. All right. Bye for now.